Mark Arman with VIB TV. We're here today with Shane McAfee. Shane is the General Manager of GVRD, the Greater Vallejo Recreation District. And we're here to talk about some of the controversy surrounding the development of the waterfront park in Glen Cove. So Shane, you've been pretty busy the last few days with all of the attention that this project has gotten. How long has the planning process been going on with the park over there?
Well, I've been with GVRD for 7 years, and it was started just prior to me being here. So I've been involved with it for 7 years. So we've been working on it extensively, off and on through the Environmental Impact Report, all the California Environmental Quality Act, all the permitting through all the various federal and state agencies. Okay. So it's been pretty extensive.
Can you give me a little bit about what kind of steps were taken to make sure that Native Americans had input during the process?
Well, first of all, we hired a consultant that was very experienced in these kind of projects, and then he was able to follow the process that's been established. And we had the state of California assigns a tribal group for us to work through and to work with to ensure that.
Now, how is that tribal group chosen? I mean, and the reason I ask that is because some of the folks down there in their civil rights complaint, the indication is that they feel that they were intentionally excluded from the process. So tell me a little bit about how you are put in touch with, or how you connect with the Native American group, the most likely descendant, the MLD, how that all works, and how the process is inclusive to other groups, and et cetera. So kind of lay it out for me.
Okay. A couple things. One is I don't know exactly how the state historical commission and all those work to establish the most likely descendant. I know that we work with whoever they determine that is, and so I can't give you a lot of background on who they chose and why they didn't choose somebody else. And then also we were open to all Native American groups throughout the master planning process and the EIR and the CEQA work. And everybody that's down at Glen Cove today, I shouldn't say everybody, but the principals who are down there today.
What do you mean by the principals?
Well, the leaders, Norman Diacampo,
okay,
and some of his.
So the folks that are camped out there.
Right.
Right.
They were involved in this process all along. They have written comments and verbal comments recorded in the EIR. They were involved all along. The Vallejo Intertribal Group was involved with this process. So not only did we work with the most likely descendants designated by the state of California, but we tried to include all Native Americans locally that had an interest, and to arrive at what we felt was the best project overall for the community.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, there are certain areas in this spot that are considered sensitive resource areas. So what kind of? Well, first of all, let's go back to the most likely descendant and so on, because what comes to my mind is essentially this: that you are subject, correct me if I'm wrong, to a state process where they determine who is the legal representative for these cultural issues and Native American issues, and you guys basically have to follow that. Is that right?
That's correct, because if we didn't follow that process, then we'd be in violation of the process established that it has been set up to ensure that things are done properly and that everybody's included. If we didn't follow that process, the project or the plan could have been thrown out at any point in time because we weren't following this process.
Right. Now the most likely descendant, is my understanding, his name is Kessner Flores, right?
Well, he's a representative of the tribal group that has been designated. He is not individually the most likely descendant, but the tribal group as a whole is the most likely descendant, and he is the person that the tribal group assigned to work with us. Correct. Okay.
And what's his position on the plan? Where does he stand?
They support it.
So Kessner Flores and the most likely descendants, the tribe. What tribe is it that's considered most likely actually related to the people that may have been buried there?
The Patwan
tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they don't have any objection to this development, and they give you guys the green light to go ahead.
Correct, and it's not like we did the plan and then took it for them for approval. They had input and kind of told us what they'd like to see, and so we melded it along those lines. And it's not different, and I think this is an important point. It's not different from what has been done all over the United States. We get done, I can give you a copy of an article where a 3,500-year-old Indian burial ground in Florida was preserved in much the same way, where they put a nice protective cap of soil over it. In that place, they actually put grass that's mowed on a regular basis over the top of it. But it has a protective layer so that vandals and other people, and it's just protected forever. And then, in whatever manner the Native Americans like to see, then we can put some informational signage and placards and respect the place. But what's most important about this site, I think, is we are protecting the site and we're making it as natural as we can and leaving it as natural as we can. It's not going to be a developed site with playgrounds and different things.
Now, what about the grading? I know there's some grading going on.
Right.
And some of the folks I've talked to out there said that the motivation for the grading is so that people with houses have a better view, which it doesn't seem to quite add up because they're sort of raised, the houses. So it seems like they have a view array. But the grading that's going on, what about that soil?
Okay.
What is it? Has it been there for a long time? Was it put there more recently? What's been done to look at that and ensure that there aren't human remains and so on? So
that's a good question. The grading that's proposed down there is to number one, restore the area to a more natural topography of what was there before. This site has been used everything from a ranch to a dairy farm to a brothel to whatever. Where we're going to grade, 18,000 cubic yards of soil was deposited there when they built the homes and stuff around on the surrounding hillsides. It was an area that they kind of filled and brought up. The drainage right now...
So they use that to fill. They filled that in with construction,
right,
dirt and debris and whatnot.
Right.
Okay.
And and when they put that in there, the drainage now slopes back towards the homes rather than towards the water. And so it does create a place with standing water where mosquitoes and different things can go. So this fill that has been brought in before is what's going to be graded and used as a protective cap over the sensitive area. And then the other part of your question about what have we done to ensure that there's not any, it's not part of that same cultural resource. Part of the plan in establishing this was a lot of core augering, where we went down and augured down and took samples out with the archaeologists present.
And that's something you've done throughout the whole site to check it?
Mm-hmm. First of all, it was done to establish where the shell mound area was. And then after that, it was expanded to make sure that there weren't shell mound areas outside of that, and to ensure that the fill area is just that. It was fill that was brought in, and that there aren't any significant cultural things buried there. However, and like any project, we'll have I shouldn't say like any project, but this project, we'll have archaeologists on hand when the grading is going on, so that if anything at all is uncovered, then we can stop and follow the proper protocol.
Okay. Now my understanding is that a lot of remains were removed from this site, and that they now reside at Berkeley, in the University of Berkeley.
Correct.
A number of the folks I talked to out there are concerned about repatriating those remains that were originally there back to the site.
Mm-hmm.
Where does GVRD stand on that kind of a activity and process of bringing the remains back?
We're 100% behind their efforts to do that. We would support that effort in any way possible. We've encouraged them and said, what we'd like from us, letters of support or whatever. We're willing to do that. We think that if this is where they need to be and be reinterred in this place, we'd support them in their effort.
Okay. Now, the other big stumbling block, obviously that's come up a lot aside from the grading of the hill, is bathroom and parking lot.
Right.
So talk to me about what kind of measures you guys have taken to look at where those are going. Obviously I assume that the core sampling and all that kind of thing has been done
right
throughout that area. Compared to where it is now, there's that little turnabout. Is the parking lot, what kind of area is the parking lot going to take up, and the bathroom? Give me a sort of a general idea about that.
As you come down the road, Whitesides Drive towards the cul-de-sac, it would be on the left-hand side. It's a small area. It'll be outside of the cultural sensitive area.
How many spaces are we talking about?
Right now we're talking at 15.
15 spaces.
Right, and that could be scaled back a little bit, if we needed to fit the site. We're looking at a small 2-restroom facility, 2-seat restroom, one for the male, one for the female, that would go on the site. It will be placed on top of fill. Part of that fill that would be moved over. It would be placed outside of the shell mound area, and as inobtrusive as possible. But as you've probably seen with what's going on down there now, there's not adequate parking, and the Native Americans themselves have had to bring in porta potties,
Right,
to take care of things.
Right.
And so all we're trying to do is take care of the needs of the people, and also looking at the needs of the community as a whole. Not only Native Americans when they might go down there. We've always supported them, and will continue to support them in their efforts to have prayer vigils or ceremonies down there. But for everybody, the Bay and Ridge Trail users, fishermen, residents that want to go down and walk the trails, so that they will have a facility so that they're not going into the bushes.
Right. Now, regarding the bathroom, what are there waste lines there already, or is there going to be a lot of digging and excavating going on to put those in?
There's already an existing sewer line that goes through that area. Located within this site already exists a pump station for the Vallejo Flood and Sanitation District, where they pump all the sewer waste to the treatment plant. And so we will tie into the sewer line, the existing sewer line, but we're not going to have to trench big sewer lines.
How many feet are we talking about?
I'm not sure. I have to get into plans on
Okay.
that.
But there is infrastructure there.
Right.
That's easily accessible without a huge amount of digging.
That's correct.
Okay. Let me see. The other thing that comes to mind is the Stremmel Mansion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've also talked with some of the folks out there, and they agree that they want to see that gone. They want to see it taken down.
Mm-hmm.
But they've also said that their issue is that it has to be done in a way that is sensitive to their spiritual beliefs. So, what have you guys done to ensure that? And the second part of the question is that if the Native American groups came forward with a licensed contractor that they felt was more in line with their spiritual beliefs, would GVRD be open to talking to that person and seeing about their compatibility with working with the plan to take the mansion down?
Right. The mansion, the caretaker home, one time a tennis court, and all that was right in the center of the shell mound area. And the tennis court has been taken out. As part of this whole plan, the determination was made the foundation will not be removed. The foundation will remain where it is. It will be covered over. Part of the grading, the soil.
So you're not removing the foundation.
No.
It stays. So
Right.
the wood part of the structure is getting taken out, and then it's getting covered over.
Right, correct.
And is that because so as not to disturb?
So we're not doing any digging in the right.
Okay.
In fact, there was an underground oil storage tank for the furnace that used to be down there, and rather than take that out, we worked with the county. Probably cost us 10 times more than it would have to have removed it the other way, but we followed a process and we abandoned it in place and filled it with concrete so we wouldn't have to dig up the soil and disturb it. So there's been a process established where we will protect the soil around the site, take the building down, leave the foundation, and fill it up. Your other question about Native Americans removing it, as that's been brought up, no less than 3 times have I offered to them to bring a proposal forward. I would hire them, I would do whatever
Right.
to do that. And as soon as I answered their question and said, bring me a contractor or a group of Native Americans that would like to do it themselves, or the local group, as long as we have somebody that's licensed and knows what they're doing and can be insured, that we would have done that. They've never followed through and never been able to provide anybody, and so we've been, as part of the project, had to acquire our own licensed contractor. So at this point, I don't know if we could switch in midstream, but I have given them no fewer than 3 different opportunities to come forth and give me a proposal.
Okay. And you haven't been able to. They haven't come up with
No,
anyone.
no. Once we made that offer and said that we would accommodate them, then they backed off and went to some other things that I don't think there was any serious effort on their part. I think it was just something that they wanted to try and block the effort.
What about the walking trails in the park? Where does that idea come from? And how does that fit in with the bigger picture? I mean, in the Bay Area and so on.
Well, you may know, and maybe not all the viewers of this may know, but there is a Bay Trail, which is a goal to establish a trail along the waterfront all around the San Francisco Bay. And then we have a Ridge Trail, which is a goal to have a trail all around the San Francisco Bay, but up on the ridges around. Both of these trails will come through the site here. And it's always been a goal of those groups to be able to come through there and tie in to this location. Right next door to us, to the south, is the Benicia State Park, and we'll tie into there. The trails going through this site will use existing trail roadway that's already in there. There is one segment, and we can show you on the master plan here in a minute if you wanted to film some of it. We'll go around the back side of the mansion, outside of the cultural resource area. We'll have existing trail that goes down already where the sewer line goes, that is a maintenance road where they can access through their manhole covers. And then we'll just put a little trail down along the waterfront. And so really those trails are existing now. They're just going to be put into a way that they'll be more accessible, and they'll have decomposed granite so that people can walk more easily. It'll be a more level surface, just a better trail. So it's not like we're going to go out and where there's pristine forest, we're going to grade it down. We're going to kind of take trails that have been created by natural use and make those more accessible. We're going to put in about 5 or 6 picnic tables at different locations so the people that come down will have a place, and then a few benches.
That's another stumbling block are the picnic tables. I've heard some of the folks down there say they're upset about the picnic tables. Have you had conversations about the picnic table issue?
We have, but that's a real recent development, and it's interesting because you go down there, they have tables set up for their own food and things right now.
So what do you see as the biggest stumbling block right now, the biggest impasse? I mean, from everything I understand and from what you have told me, the folks that are down there protesting and objecting, they don't have a legally recognized right over the property per se, because they are not connected with the most likely descendant directly, right?
Right.
Okay. So you guys have to follow the most likely descendants' approval or disapproval, and they've approved it. The people that are from the Patwan tribe that are, as you say. Of course, a lot of the folks down there feel that it doesn't matter what tribe, and that it's a resource for all Native Americans and so on. So there's a lot of really confusion, and you talk to one person, you get one story, you talk to another person, you get another. But what do you see as the biggest stumbling blocks, the biggest issues to resolving? I mean, we've talked about the bathroom. Is there anything else that you see as a big obstacle to resolving this in a way that both sides can feel comfortable?
Right. Well, I think it's important to say that the principals of the people that are down there protesting at this point in time have been involved in this process, and their concerns have been brought up all along, and we've tried to mitigate it and bring that in as it fit in a bigger picture of the whole and the greater Native American community that's out there. Unfortunately, we have individuals down there that are sending out mass emails to people all over the world telling half-truths and falsities that are creating some stimulation out there. The way that I like to, or maybe the best example that I've been able to come up with this week as we've been dealing with this, it reminds me a lot of examples. Say you have a favorite NFL football team, and you know the process and the procedures to try and win a championship, and you support that, and your team's doing really good, and your team as a whole, and the league and the greater organization is working really well, and your team gets down to the playoffs and they win a few games. Next thing you know, they're in the Super Bowl. And so you're at the Super Bowl supporting your team. When the game is over, the outcome isn't how you liked it to be. So instead of accepting it that the process and everything works and for the betterment of the entire whole football world, you go out in a parking lot and stage a sit-in and demand that the game be played over again, hoping for a different result. And I think that's what we're getting down there. Is we have these individuals who were involved all along, had their input, were participating. When the final project came out, you have a few people who didn't like it and decided that they're going to create as much confusion and problems about this project. And there are enough people that are believing the propaganda without reading the plan, without finding out the background, because in this day and age it's so easy to file out, cut and paste an email and blow it off, or make a phone call and think that they've done their part without doing the research. And of course our organization is small. We don't have a marketing person or a PR person to spin things out. We're trying to do what we can and deal with it. And so as far as being able to resolve this, we need to continue to work within the process. If we back out and negotiate with a few people who have taken over a site and are demanding, what does that do to the integrity of the process of a whole for everybody else that participated and worked through the process? Not even speaking, and that goes also for the all of the state and federal agencies, the governments themselves.
What about this federal? Just to interject, what about this federal mediator that's coming? What's the story with that?
Well, she inserted herself into this process because she felt that there may be a need. There's no obligation on our part to participate. I think her intentions are good, and to try and make sure that everybody works together. But one of the things we have to be real careful with is to work with the Native American groups that have been assigned and given the authority to speak on this part. If we now ignore their participation up to this point over the last few years as they've developed something that they can live with, and now we ignore them and go with these dissidents who have defamed them and try and negotiate with them and ignore the principal people, how does that affect the existing EIR? How does that affect the standings with the Water Control Board and the Federal Fish and Wildlife and the State Fish and Game and everybody else that was part of this process to develop a plan? We've got to be sensitive to that.
So you guys are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place in that respect.
Yes.
What about the neighbors, the neighborhood? Have you had any feedback from all the activity?
Oh yeah, there are a few people that support the cause, the idea. There are, I would say, probably the majority of people live in the area that want to see it protected. A permanent resolution to this site down there with this decaying mansion and house and things that will come to an end. The biggest issue I've been having, and I was on the phone quite a while this morning with a resident that lives right down there close to where they're, and she said that they were beating their drums until 2 a.m. this morning, hooting and hollering and doing different things. And so they're in obvious violation of some sound ordinances, and they're in the park past closing time. They've, the smoke is blowing up towards the homes. The biggest thing is last night I was on the phone with a different lady who lives down there who likes to walk her dogs down there every day, and she now feels intimidated and feels like she can't go. Every time she tries walking in the park, they surround her and follow her and try and get her to sign petitions and question her about where she stands. Does she support them? Does she not? And she just feels intimidated and feels like she can't go into a public park now. And so that's probably the biggest problem that the residents have.
And what about the fact that at this point you've got a situation there where there are people congregating when the park is supposed to be closed? You've got open fires. Are you concerned about something happening, a fire or some kind of an accident, something along those lines, and the potential for liability?
Well, somewhat. We met with representatives of this group last Monday and said, our concern is that our parks close at dusk, at sunset, and we need to be able to enforce these rules unilaterally and consistently throughout the district. How are we going to do that? We recognize your right to express your feelings and whatnot. But we also have requirements for permits for gatherings in the park. We have permits that we have to issue if we're going to allow anything different from our rules, and that we didn't want any camping down there. They told us that they would not allow camping. They would take down their tents every day, and that we would allow a small little fire to remain where it was, as long as there wasn't a large group, as long as it was like 10 or fewer people after the hours closed. My gut feeling is, and from what I'm hearing from the residents, is that they're not taking down all the tents daily, that they have large groups of people in there after sunset. So we rely on the Vallejo Police Department to enforce rules and laws on city-owned property and parks. This is city-owned property. It's a park, and so we rely on the police to do that. And this, what appears from the phone calls to me is that they've just taken a hands-off type approach and not going to get involved unless maybe unless something really escalates.
Okay. And what about the construction schedule? That has to be coming up.
Right. Well, we're looking at this project site. We have a contractor signed, ready to go. We have received all the permits that we need to go forward with the project. And we're looking at starting sometime in May. So we're meeting with, we met yesterday with the city police department and city attorneys to try and see how we're going, see if we come up with a strategy on how to handle this issue once we get close to the construction time.
Okay. So you're trying to talk with these folks, trying to reach some kind of arrangement. Things are moving forward slowly. Nobody's been arrested at this point, to my understanding, even if the neighbors are getting a little upset. And so that's kind of the situation as it is now. Is there anything you want to add, or any sort of parting thoughts you have about the whole situation and or about the prospect of bringing this to some kind of a compromise that everyone can live with? What are your final kind of thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts is that the whole goal and objective of this is to, number one, preserve and protect the site, help it to be more of a form and location similar to what it has always been, to preserve it in perpetuity forever so that people can have a confidence that nothing else is going to happen to it, and make it a natural place where people can go and they can quietly contemplate and enjoy the scenery and the view and respect the Native American heritage that was there. And so that's the process that we're working through. When I was down there Wednesday evening, I went down, they refused to talk to me. In fact, when one of their members came to talk to me, the rest, 4 or 5 of the others, come and grabbed him and said, "Don't talk to him," and pulled him back to the fire circle. And so I don't know how we're going to be able to compromise when, and we've been told by those individuals down there now that there is no compromise. They've got areas of contention, and they'll put say that these are some things we're concerned about, but when you really push them on it, it's, we want the site left as it is. No compromise. So we're going to have to kind of play this out as, and learn as we go, and be as careful as we can, and at the same time try and preserve the rights and respect the wishes of the greater community as a whole. We have 120,000 people that this, even more than that when you consider all the users of the project from the site that come and use the bay and ridge trails, and other people that come through, the Native Americans that come from outside the site. The site probably represents a couple 100,000 people, and right. We already know that the people who are down there now don't represent or respect the thoughts and wishes of the greater Native American people across the United States who is supporting the project. So we're just going to have to play it by ear and do the best we can to serve the people that we work for. And that's the residents of Vallejo.
Okay. Shane, thanks so much for meeting and talking with me, and I wish you the best with this, and I hope that at some point everyone does talk and we see something worked out, resolved, that both sides can live with.
Okay.
Thank you so much.